during the bull market, we didn't have to pay attention to all that stuff because the association that people brought to our packages was crypto go up,
right?
Stock go up, I make money, yay, yay, yay.
Yeah.
The conversion rate for like a good promo is now half of what it was in 2018. So, and those are the people where if we're talking, we're like, they're crushing it. Crushing it now is you're fucking half of what you were 6 years ago, which is like, what the hell, dude? But everyone's like, nope, we're just going to keep doing the same shit.
But there was a group, I would say a core group of people here where we bucked the trend. And that's the role of a legit guru, is to buck the trend.
All right, so today we've got an esteemed panel of copywriters. Everyone here knows Brian Hicks, whose conversation has FinPub lost its soul, got like so much feedback from everybody. Not just, founder of Angel Publishing, but amazing copywriter in his own right. Sean MacIntyre, been writing copy in FinPub for 10 plus years, works with Mark Ford, all the big groups, lots of big winners, has an amazing YouTube channel. And then, of course, there's Rob Braddock, who we let come in, because it's Rob. And
that's fair.
Pretty much it. But the reason I wanted to do this today was there's been a lot of conversations about copy over the last few years, and we were just having it earlier about a lot of people, how easy it was to sell and how you didn't really have to think. You just had to kind of write, crypto's going up. We have a crypto newsletter, buy it. And now people have to think a lot more. And there's an aspect of copy that to me is not a sales letter, and I think of it as promo. And so I'll tell you a quick story from Clayton Makepeace back in the direct mail days when he was selling coins. And I always love this idea. This, to me, gets at the heart of what promo is they were selling a rare coin set, and before he writes the promo, he took a bunch of the product and he mailed it to Reagan, Thatcher, Gorbachev, a whole bunch of people. And so the promo was a picture of all Bill Gates, was a picture of all these people at the top of the deck, and the headline was, "They've got theirs, now you get yours." Right? And so like that is a creative solution where it has nothing to do with the value of the product. There's a concept around the promotion itself that was created that grabs attention, adds credibility. It does things that you wouldn't do if you were just looking at, hey, I have these coins. Here's the copy that I would write around that. Right? It's a promotional idea, and so that was the genesis of this conversation was, how do you think like that? And so to start with, I was like, why don't we talk through like why that's important or how you see that idea of promo versus newsletter or VSL, and then maybe a bunch of other examples because there's a lot of great ones in this space. So, Brian, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, we used to have a letter here called Like-Minded People. And whenever you are writing a promo or a newsletter, you have to tug on those emotional triggers that you're one of us, I'm one of you, okay? And so that everything that we do here at Angel, I can't speak for Agora or any other place, but we always try to connect with our reader through things like that. I never heard that story before. The rare.
It's one of my favorites.
I never heard that before, but that is genius. But yeah, Clayton, I guess he's the one that wrote the promo, is already making a connection to the prospective buyer, the client, and hey, look, Reagan got his. Now it's time for you to get yours, and you want to be like him.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, it's a very direct thing.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what we're talking about here is stuff that's you're going to find in like Don Miller's Story Brand or like, hey, Whipple squeeze this. Like this is stuff that brand advertisers have been doing for 30, 40, 50 years. Ultimately that, you tell me that story, and I think Michael Jordan on a Wheaties box. What we're talking about is tapping into, every direct response package, every great direct response package, they say like, either taps into greed or fear. But if you look at some of the great breakout packages, there's a lot more nuance there. There's a lot more attention to subtler associations. Some of these packages really do put the B in subtle when it comes to stuff like that. And so what you'll find is that, the big packages that have broke out for our industry have been a lot like that, where there's been more attention paid to brand or the sort of nascent associations people bring to the products that we're trying to sell. And again, like during the bull market, we didn't have to pay attention to all that stuff because the association that people brought to our packages was crypto go up,
right?
Stock go up, I make money, yay, yay, yay.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems that the industry faces as a whole actually is the amount of sameness, right? Sameness in the type of content that's delivered. Sameness in the way it's formatted, sameness in the way it's sold, sameness in the way that you position a guru. It's really common for people not to know that they didn't buy this product from you because everything is so similar in its tone and expression. And like when you bring up brand, there's like always been this tradition in direct response that anything related to branding is bullshit, doesn't sell. But it's like, well, there's trillions of dollars sold using it. It's just understanding what it is very different, and it's basically the relationship people have with a company. And so with us, it's kind of the guru's brand. It's like people know Brian. People follow Brian. They don't follow me for stock investing advice because if they did, they would be broke. But Rob,
yeah.
What are your thoughts on this just as a concept?
Yeah, so everything you said is right. And this might not sound... I'm sorry, my phone is going off and I have my phone open so I can look at the notes I made, so everyone knows. I think a lot of it actually has to do with transparency, and a radical amount of transparency. And it might not sound like that at first when we're talking about brand. But the reason everything sounds the same is because everyone's just copying everyone else, and that's not transparent and it's not full of integrity. And I really think people throw those words around, but I really think if anyone's going to break out in the future, it's going to be because they have a radical transparency and integrity. So an example would be, we just had the Bitcoin halving, right? Every guru on earth was doing Bitcoin halving promo. We got to do a Bitcoin halving promo, even if they weren't like a crypto guy, really. It's like someone will put out a Bitcoin halving promo, and I can't stand that shit. But they're like, okay, we can make some quick money and then move on to the next thing, right? So I would much rather see someone put out a anti-crypto promo right now and talk about when was the last time there's been a hot take in this industry?
Well, so I think like on a basic level, this issue gets to two things. One was the essence of what you said in FinPub. Has FinPub lost its soul? And the other one is this idea that I don't know how to get attention unless it's just point at the attention that's already there. And one of the things that I know about look, we sell into trends. It's easier to sell into trends. We should not stop doing that. But if your only reliance on getting people's attention is that, hey, this is a trend that they're already interested in, you have a creative problem.
What do you mean when you say we sell into trends? I know what you mean, but
Bitcoin's going up, so we sell a Bitcoin crypto newsletter, right? Mm-hmm. When cannabis was hot, you had cannabis promos and cannabis products, right? That's a very common that's part of what we do. It's not the only thing we do, and it's not always the thing that we've done. There have been things great promos in history, Dow 50,000, that were not.
That's coming true right now.
Right.
Why? I understand what you mean, and it makes perfect sense. But just for the sake of friction, let's say why? Why do we do that? Because, all right, let's say we have a thing going on. We have a publishing business, and we don't have a crypto thing. And I can see crypto's going up, but I don't believe in it, right? Or whatever. Why
Right.
why would I like sell into the trend? You know, so and I think that's part of the problem. And you know, why am I? Here's something I've been. Just let me make. I'll forget. That's why. Shit, I actually forgot already. Just in the time it took me to say, I'll forget. You know when you're doing writing a promo, and you talk about like all the predictions, right? That a guru's made, and a lot of times like there's some fancy copywriting fudging going on with that. But I was thinking about this the other day. Like Facebook came out with like earnings that like it was a couple of months ago. It smashed expectations, right? And it was like the big news and blah, blah, blah. There wasn't one effing guru in financial publishing that saw that coming. Every one of you hotshot gurus that like, I called this, my proprietary indicator. Okay, how come no one called that? So we have just people, if the gurus are just reacting to what's already happening, and then we're just selling into a trend that's already happening. Like, what do I need the reader? What do I need you for?
You go ahead.
I'll defer to you if you want to respond to that first, but I have maybe two things that I would probably say. I mean, I think the first thing is, ultimately we're talking about human psychology, and humans. One trick about humans is that they believe that whatever is happening now is going to persist into the future. That's just a fact. And humans are terrible at predicting the future because of that. And so marketers naturally want to lean into that. And one of the things that you see with a lot of gurus is you don't see a lot of contrarianism anymore, people who buck against trends, because they're often ridiculed for that. They're punished for that. Oftentimes for years, and just look at Michael Burry, who was ran over the coals by his own investors because he spotted the housing bubble in 2005? Imagine watching all of your money decline for 3 years, millions of dollars, until you're proven right. Investment newsletters used to be about ideas like that because there was a strong little pocket, a market for that was not being served. And I think that goes back to what you've been saying, which is, all these people are moving in this one direction. Whenever that happens, what you often find is that there's a little pocket of people that gets left behind, and not enough financial newsletters, not enough promos have been really serving that group of people that perhaps don't like crypto, that perhaps don't want the hot new cannabis stock, that perhaps want something that is contrarian, that is interesting. Those are the pockets where you can actually extract a lot of value because you can deliver a lot of value. There's a reciprocity there that I don't think a lot of more contemporary marketers have been paying attention to, because it's a lot easier to go for the quick money. And I think that's what's happening in terms of what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Our industry, we used to pride ourselves on talking about things that the mainstream media couldn't talk about, wouldn't talk about, or was just too scared to talk about it. Okay? Angel Publishing, we got our birth was on a single idea. One idea that nobody, there were some people out there talking about this, but it was one idea that took Angel Publishing from zero to here where it is now. And that was the idea of peak oil. Okay? And for years, we ran, if you look at Google Analytics, you see the search history, all that search was from us, from us publishing about it, and we published a book about it and everything. But from that idea, peak oil, came all these other predictions that we made. Electric cars, renewable energy, solar, wind, all that. And then also, because of peak oil is it's the end of easy to get cheap oil, all these drillers went back with this revolutionary new technology, fracking, and went back to these old legacy oil fields like the Permian and the Bakken, and went back and took us, made America the #1 oil producer on the planet again. For me, the role of a newsletter guru is not to sell into the trend. We should be anti-trend, or we create the trend. And that is peak oil is a very good example of somebody in our industry taking an obscure topic and just blowing the doors off of it.
Mm-hmm. And so, actually, I agree. I think that's the magic of a great newsletter. I think the issue is that so mainstream trends are really good at grabbing attention. They're just really crappy at converting them, right? Because you can Bitcoin's going up. The idea then is to buy Bitcoin, and so you have to have some other part of the story that's not there in order to convert it. And so, or to take a contrarian view, or to bring something up out of nowhere, which is like peak oil, but when it's not, like, that's a harder thing on the front end in particular. But it's also what makes a franchise. I feel like makes a business is those kind of ideas. And so to kind of circle it back to the idea of like promo, it's like, I think what we're saying is like there's this issue that we struggle with, which is there's a promotional ease with big trends, and then it's really easy for all of us, publishers, copywriters, marketers, to either say, I'm not going to send anything to the trend, then you miss the attention arbitrage that you have, or I'm just going to sell whatever's popular, and then you have a trend letter, which is a great business if you're a trend guy, but everyone's not. And so I think like the idea of coming up with promo ideas, and I have an example that was in trend too, but you were about to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, John, it's also a crowded field when you talk about, when you're doing a promo that's, mainstream, mainstream trend. I don't remember who this guy, he's an older guy, he's in our industry, but I saw a YouTube ad from him, and his first pitch was like, hey, stop listening to those 22-year-olds that are promoting on TikTok. And, he's kind of right. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but man, I am just seeing like ad after ad after ad for algorithms and robo, and I'm just like, this is our competition?
Well, the algorithms, that's a funny thing aside, the algorithms promote sameness, right? Because it's like, oh, this gets attention. That's why you have dance trends on TikTok, right? Like everybody does the same dance because the algorithm promotes sameness.
I mean, we all want want as many customers as we can possibly get, but at what cost?
Yeah. Right. But let me throw this promo concept out, because this was perfectly on trend, and one way to look at trends is to be counter trend. It's also to be ahead of the trend, where it's like, well, this is what's shifting. Like, this is the next new thing. Mike Palmer had a talk he did one time where he said it's basically that. You're like, well, what's the next part of the story that hasn't been told? And so you're telling that. And so I always think of Jed Canty wrote that John Boehner promo for the National Cannabis Investors Institute. Mm-hmm. So cannabis was huge. There's a big trend. Everyone's talking about it. Boehner, this is the promo part of it, is John Boehner was a speaker, and he was the leading opponent of cannabis legalization on the Hill. Mm-hmm. Then he retires from that, changes his mind, and joins a cannabis company's board. Now they manage, because that, like all small caps, need some kind of distribution and eyeballs, where they were able to get Boehner to come on and do a promo webinar with them, where he's like, hey, I was against this. Now I was completely wrong. Here's why. And so the trend was they weren't counter trend. They were saying that, one, this legalization is going to speed up. Even the hardest opponents are against it, and they found the perfect avatar of that opponent to be on the thing. Like, the whole idea of that promo was itself a spectacle, right? But it was on trend, but it was talking about the next part of the trend. And that, to me, is like, that's a phenomenal promo, because you get so much attention. And then you also had, from the customer standpoint, there was a lot of people at the time who were still on the fence, like, I'm hearing about it, but I don't know if I should get on. And so now that perfectly spoke to them. So there's a lot of things that hit with that. And it was a big blockbuster. It did phenomenal. I don't remember the numbers right now, but cool promo. not a sales letter or a VSL, a promo.
I have a example of a promo, like promotional thing I did. It's probably one of the biggest flops in the history of financial publishing. I'm happy to tell you about it.
We can beat that.
I'll tell you about it. But I'll tell that story real quick, and then eventually I want to come back to it where I think it's bigger than that. I understand like what this podcast is about, promo or whatever, but I think it's much bigger than that. And like the reason you have to think individual promo, like a promo at a time, and like this individual promotion is because most gurus don't have a brand. They don't have a universe, right? Mm-hmm. So I do want to come back to that. But so keeping with the theme of like promo, this was 2018 midterm elections. Marijuana was on a referendum in like 11 states.
I remember this.
So this is going to be like a big deal. Like if 11 states all pass some version of medical marijuana or decriminalization, then I can't remember, but at that point it's like 46 states. You know, it's almost like de facto federal decriminalization. Okay, so I came from the world of politics. I'm like, this is my wheelhouse, dude. Like, so the promo was we were going to do live, genuinely live, election night coverage of all like as the votes come in, like we're doing a CNN panel, and it was with Ray Blanco, the guru, and we hired Montel Williams he was a big marijuana advocate. Mm-hmm. We got David D, Dan Kennedy's right-hand guy. Okay, and then the concept was it's going to be like CNN. We're going to watch the results come in, and we actually did this. So it'd be like, what, Missouri's coming in? Missouri, yep, it looks like with 82% of the vote counted, it looks like medical marijuana is now, in Missouri. And we'd kick it to Dave D, and Dave D had like a map of going over each thing. Dude, this was so fucking awesome. It was so great. And then he's pitching throughout. So we'd do like the update, blah, blah, blah. So Missouri, so we're going to hear from Ray in a second what that means for all of these pot stocks, blah, blah, blah. So if you want to get like the latest report, the spin was, we don't even have the report ready. Ray Blanco is going to stay up tonight after all the polls close, like up until midnight, writing the latest fucking marijuana investment report based on what just happened hours ago. Make sure you're awake like at 7 a.m, because that's when the email is going to come through, right? And he's pitched, so we're pitching, like click the button now for the whole promo. And then we kick it back to Ray, and he's like, yeah, okay, well, with Missouri coming in, blah, blah, blah. We do that for the whole night. God, it was so good. Like, so this is going to be like, $5 million like that night probably. Those are like those days of Agora. With the amount of people we had on the hot list, we could see the number of people live watching. And I say watching, why was this a bomb? The decision was made to host it at like a studio, like off-site studio. And 2018, whatever they ran tests, everything was good. Whatever it didn't go out, the packets were wrong. So if you're watching it, there's no sound. And there's no sound. And then like maybe you'd get like a freeze frame of a picture and hear sound. And then maybe you'd hear sound and it would start over from the beginning. Like you're hearing the audio from the beginning, but they're 30 minutes into the promo. Anyway, super bomb. I think we made like a couple $100,000 the next morning just with like emails we sent out. But I want you to imagine that did $5 million and just think about. So in terms of promotion, that's amazing. Promotion.
That's an amazing story. And sadly, one you couldn't repeat with that story because it's so tied to that one specific situation.
Yeah.
And tech could destroy it. Go ahead.
Well, no, if you wanted to change the subject, I wanted to change the subject, but I wanted to sort of like yoke together that anecdote with the John Boehner promo, with what you, Brian, were talking about, which is that ultimately what we're talking about when it comes to promo is like finding the story.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we're sort of railing against here at this table are the promos that are just like, buy when you see X, stock go up, sell, make $1 million, buy Lambo.
X Pattern did $30 million.
I know. Right.
But
fair.
There were a lot of ones that didn't do anything.
Yes. And what I'm saying is that like there are times, like fat times, when those sorts of promos do extremely well just because of the dynamics of the market and demographics that we're speaking to. And then there are times when the market needs something else, and story tends to do a little bit better. Late 90s, same story. Tech stocks go up by tech stocks. That was the story. Nobody needed anything else. Around 2000s, they needed something else, and it was peak oil. People were more ready to hear different ideas. With pot stocks in particular, that was a fantastic story. With John Boehner switching, that was a fantastic story. All of those are much bigger than pot stocks go up.
Exactly.
And I think it is incumbent upon us now to find bigger stories that make promotions, that make investment newsletter ideas bigger than what they are. Because nobody wakes up sweaty and tumescent in the morning going, I want a fucking newsletter.
100%, 1,000%. And what I think we should do is, I think there's different like I want to go through a few more examples, and then hone in on. I think there are certain types of big ideas that have been applied to promos that we can go into. Fernando Cruz has done an amazing job in a bunch of ways, and he has kind of some patterns that he repeats in different creative ways. And then I think kind of where we're leading, though, is that it's more than just the promo. It's how does the editor and guru become more promotable? How does the franchise have an idea that becomes more fundamentally promotable, that allows for more creative things to do? And then there's just the sheer ballsy willingness to try something different and crazy like that. And so do you have any other like promos that you can think of that like the idea of the promo itself was a bit of a spectacle and added rather than just the story of the investment?
This might have to be one thing when you like cut and pause. I have to like really think about this for a second.
Well, I can jump in and then
Please
you can
go.
think of,
Yeah.
I think about there was a promo that Matt Inslee did where like there was some code or something like that, and they filmed like inside of like a bank armored car. And so they had footage of like the armored car, and like the whole premise was like the delivery of like this code in a USB drive that was so valuable. And so like the beginning of the promo was all about like the conference of this USB drive to the guru, being like, the secret to making money is inside this USB drive. And so it's all about just building up those associations that people have, like, oh my God, like they're transporting this code in an armored car to their offices. Like, wow.
Yeah.
And so that's really what spectacle can do. It builds up anticipation and intrigue and ultimately investment in people's mind for the things that you're trying to build interest for, without you having to be like, and look at all these benefits and look at all these features. Right. This is great.
And that's where I think of like, I mean, Wealth Press did some stuff like that too with the armored car. There was the I think this one back to Martin Weiss in 2009 when they were basically going to short the market, and everyone was so scared that the market was going to keep going down, and so they did their $1 million contrarian portfolio where he put $1 million into an account and said, I'm going to put $1 million of my money into this account and trade it alongside you. And that was a huge winner. Of course, it was like at almost to the day at the bottom of the market. Then they repeated that at the Motley Fool when they did their first back end, and they had like a $12 to plus $1 million launch. Then Bill Bonner, the Bonner letter, what was the name of it?
Oh, yeah.
They did that with, they had Chris Mayer, who I remember at Agora Financial, like this guy has our best track record by far, but we have the hardest time selling him. And then they finally had a great promo for him because they said, Bill's like, I'm going to put $5 million of my money into an account. And so like, and then showing that, right? And then I go back to the trading side and think of that same concept applied in a different way. Tim Sykes early on went to, I forget how many banks he had to go to. He had to go to like so many different banks to pull out $1 million in cash of his money. And he had $1 million in cash, and it looked so good that he had big name rappers stealing his photos without him in it and saying it was like them, because it's so hard to get $1 million cash.
Yeah.
And so like that idea of putting real money into stuff, I did this in a launch in 2009, 10, where we put 50 grand into an account and had the guy's mother follow his instructions to make the trade and show that she could make successful trades. And so like that is like a repeated idea, right?
Yeah.
Any others that jump out? We can get to Fernando's long
No,
string.
I was thinking about this. A lot of that, like the spectacle type of stuff, was with the hot lists a lot of the times, right? And I was thinking, it just hit me the other day. I was like, no one does hot lists anymore. I was like, when's
Yeah,
the
they
last?
do.
When?
They do.
Yeah, they do.
Who's done a hot list recently? I don't.
Andrew Taylor just talked about the test when they were like, "Can we get rid of these?" And he's like, "So let's actually try like doing a hot list and just starting to promote the promo for the same amount of emails and the same amount of time." And the hot list one, I forget, it was like 70% higher.
Who did that?
Alta.
Oh, Alta.
We're going to try that idea hot list, but building it on our Discord channel.
Nice.
So it's still in the works. I'll let you know how it does.
Yeah.
But we're literally trying to figure, just like everybody else, just trying to figure out how to, collect hot names. And right now, I know Oxford Club is having a really good success with their War Room. Is it called? Yeah. And so we're going to try to do the same thing here. And my idea is, instead of us always having to try to go after the customer, I want the customer to wake up in the morning and say, "Hey, I got to jump onto this Angel Discord channel to find out what's going on." So the market's already right there for us. Okay, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that goes back to just branding, like literally building something that people gravitate towards, rather than like making something that people get despite their misgivings. Yeah. And so ultimately, I think what you're doing, what War Room has done, is like what a lot of these TikTok 22-year-old like Meet Kevin on YouTube is another example, where he's just in Discord and being like, "Hey, I'm buying calls on Tesla today. You can join on this trade." And then he only shows on YouTube the ones that work, and that's it.
Yeah. I think that again, that's the radical transparency is part of that, and what we're talking about in terms of like the spectacle and promotion and hot lists, right? That's all part of entertainment, and that that's what I've been like pushing, right? It's like from a front end perspective, because if you do entertaining stuff initially and you build the brand and people come into your universe, then not only do you have someone like forever and a million different other potential revenue streams, like all of those guys there's guys like that make $1 million a year selling coffee mugs. Like Crowder, right? A lot of right? Coffee mug, like Republican, like shit talker. I don't get the connection. Makes $1 million a year doing it because whatever, he gets people into the universe. And once you have people in that universe, then I think you don't have to do, like, not everything is we got to come up with a crazy promotion for this thing. We got to come up with a crazy promotion for this thing. You have the people in the universe because they came in on like a more traditional branding, know, like, trust. I know, like, and trust this guy. And
selling the relationship first, like that. A great front end, a great like acquisition piece in my mind was always that, like, you might be selling the particular idea, but you're selling the idea from within the context of the guru's worldview, because you have to sell that relationship. And if you can sell that relationship, you have a lot more leeway afterwards. But if you never sell that relationship and you just sell the trend, which I think we kind of alluded to earlier, is all you have is a buyer, not a customer. And I had a conversation last Friday with Joe Schriefer, and he made this point I thought really well. He's like coming back, and he's like, I want to kind of right some of the wrongs that I felt like I did first time around, right? And one of them is this idea that like just because somebody buys something doesn't mean they're a subscriber, right? A customer isn't a subscriber. A subscriber is someone who subscribes to your ideas. They subscribe to this guru. They subscribe to the story of the business. Whereas a customer just bought the newsletter and he could care less, right? And so like that distinction, I think, is what you're getting at with branding and everything else.
And there's levels to that too. You know, there's a buyer, there's a customer, there's a fan, and then there's a disciple. And ultimately, what we can accomplish, what one can accomplish with like what you're trying to do, is something that brand agencies have been doing for years and years, which is basically leveraging earned media. Which is if you have disciples, you know, at the highest level that you can go, you have these people that are literally going to be doing advertising for you. Why do we all know Andrew Tate's name? Well, you know, like that. He has disciples. He doesn't just have fans.
Right.
He has people who actively will go to the mat for him, you know,
So-
for better or for worse.
A great story from in the industry on that was in, I think, 2005. There was a big $25,000 Agora marketing conference, and Porter Stansberry spoke, and he's like, there is no model. We're all different. But in his model, because he wasn't doing free at the time, he's like, okay, if you don't pay anything, you're not listening to me. If you pay $100, you realize I'm talking in the room or something, right? And he goes up the chain, and he's like, I don't believe you're actually listening to me until you've paid $25,000 for the Atlas Club or whatever. He's like, then I have your attention. And that's like the disciple. He's like, I have that guy's attention. Like, he's listening. I can help him. Everyone else has marginal layers of both attention and, I guess, loyalty to the business.
Yeah.
And I would bet that the reason Porter is able to do that is because the stuff he's saying is stuff that not everyone else is saying, or he's saying it in a very different way. Like we were talking earlier about how everyone sounds the same. And, like, you know, if you changed a couple lines of every promo, you could swap out guru names and the promos could stay the same and nothing would be different. But and there's a few gurus that you can't do that with, where they have their unique voice, right? So like he was getting them in like differently than how I think like the future is, but he can do that because, you know, Porter had hot takes or contrarian.
Hey, he did not have a crypto newsletter.
Yeah.
He's one of the only ones that said no, I'm not, because I don't believe in it, so I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Now, as you know,
We don't.
no.
We don't have a crypto now. Thought about it, and we're about to launch this goes back to the unique idea of our industry. I'm helping launch a new crypto that's based on the coin will be backed by gold, but gold that's not above ground. It's gold that's been a proven resource that's still in the ground. So that is, I mean, for me, this is probably the most excited I've been in a very long time. So it's, you know, and that's the thing. Every guru, every newsletter has to have, you know, who is Bill Bonner? What's he stand for? You should be able to, like, right off the top of your head, know right away.
And then,
A lot of people in our industry, you can't do that.
yeah.
Yep.
And then creating a promotion around somebody. That's where, like, to your point before about, like, you know, you always have to have a great promo or creative idea if nobody gives a crap about the guy. But before we go into, I really do want to dive into, like, how do we make a franchise and a guru, like, more promotable? Let's run through just a few more examples, if I can, because it's going to nag me if I say I forgot to do these. Because Fernando has done a bunch of amazing things, right? Like they gave away Bitcoin as part of their Bitcoin promo, right? So you would get Bitcoin back, and that turned out to be a really good win for their people. He did the Meganar, which was the webinar with the most, I think, they have like 100,000 people on there or something. And then he did, Jason Ring posted photos in our Discord of the Jetinar, where the webinar was live on a private jet flying to Switzerland. What was another one that he did? He did Glenn Beck, which was a big name with an audience.
That was a really good one. That was interesting because at the time, like if you remember how that was done, like that was That was Glenn Beck's show. It wasn't just like the Bonner idea, or John Boehner. That was a cool idea, right? But the Glenn Beck idea, essentially the promo was a Glenn Beck show.
Yeah.
Right? When he was doing the chalkboard stuff and flipping it over and writing all that stuff out, he turned Glenn Beck's show into a promo. That was like really good.
He came with audience,
Right.
raving fans.
Yep.
And then a version of this that didn't work as well was Raging Bull tried to do the Shark Tank, Angels and Entrepreneurs, the Money Map. Jed again had Robert or Herjavec from Shark Tank on their Angels promo, and it did great. So they got Damon John to do something, but it was a really good example of, I think, why things don't like. It's a big name, but it didn't work at all because they basically had him saying stuff like, my team did a research, who's the best trader in America, and it's this guy. It had nothing to do with Damon John's Shark Tank experience, the private investing, any of the things that he was authority for or a celebrity for, and they just tried to make it like, have him say this is the best trader in the world, and, it didn't really work.
A similar promo to that was the Neil Patel promo that MoneyBap did. It was like Neil Patel's deal flow, and
That was the one with Herjavec.
Oh, got it. Well, it wasn't with Herjavec. It was before that because it was with Mike Ward was the host, and then he was speaking to Neil Patel to talk about like private deal flow.
Yeah, I thought Herjavec. That's the one on the yacht, right?
It was before.
Oh, they did a version before that. Okay.
Yeah, and the one with Neil Patel. That was all about like private deals and deal flow and stuff like that. But that promo was really differentiated because of just how incredible the offer was. Like you want to talk about like differentiating yourself based on spectacle. That offer was like way differentiated because of that. But
the whole franchise.
Yeah.
So Jed with both those, the National Institute for Cannabis Research or Investors and Angels and Entrepreneurs, basically created what the franchise should be as part of the initial promo. And so the offer construction was integrated into what the business was going to be for the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine that, making your fulfillment before you try to sell it.
Crazy. Did we have a list of other ones? I thought I had a couple more that were different. So like in here, there's like guys like, so just as a kind of a summation then, you have things like Glenn Beck and Boehner, who you have a big name, a celebrity, come in that is relevant. That's key, relevant. Then you have things that are like giveaways, like the Bitcoin thing. Then you have things like, hey, the experience of this promo, like your election night promo or the Jet Nar or something, is like itself, like the format of the promo is a bit of a spectacle itself. You have offer spectacle. And then you have, I think, what you like your Fintertainment thing, which maybe we can cut a piece in later to show people, is basically like Anthony Bourdain on the road.
So
kind of promo.
Yeah, not exactly, but yeah. So the idea of Fintertainment is, I have to give a shout out to Misha Brent, who like co-created the idea with me, and like pushed me to do it because I was like very reluctant and old school like for a while, right? But then I just kept seeing stuff like go down and down and down across the board. I don't know what angel stuff is, but I was talking to someone from one of the Agora pubs the other day, asking them like, what are your conversion rate? People are pretty open about that kind of stuff. Like, what do you need to work to go external and whatnot? And it's essentially almost exactly half of what it was like in 2018. Like the click-through rates are half. The conversion rate for like a good promo is now half of what it was in 2018. So, and those are the people where if we're talking, we're like, they're crushing it. Crushing it now is you're fucking half of what you were 6 years ago, which is like, what the hell, dude? But everyone's like, nope, we're just going to keep doing the same shit. So that's why we're like, okay, like what's got to be different? And that's why I think like, yeah, the Fintertainment thing was born. Sorry, was I supposed to go on a Fintertainment rant or no?
No, I like this.
Okay. So, yeah, it's sort of going back to like everything we said about integrity and know, like, and trust and have a brand and bring people into your universe and then all that and then multiple streams of revenue. It's not just like that. The first one that we did, which no bullshit is coming out today, like in hours. Yeah, is the
There's a lot of people pulling on that one.
right, and a lot of potential clients going, we're going to wait to see how this first one does before we cut a check, right? So, so the idea is not just that. The idea is that a way to make money is essentially ancillary. All of us participate in some way with some form of entertainment, right? We watch Yellowstone, and like you'll binge watch it for like 3, 4, 5 hours, right? And then the next thing you know, there's Yellowstone beer in the frickin' supermarket. It just so happens that the first idea that was picked up, Chris Rowe, True Market Insiders, and this is called Uncommon Opportunity. Yeah, it's the idea of taking the Anthony Bourdain show and mashing it with a financial thing. The pitch was always like, okay, have you seen the Anthony Bourdain show? Yeah. Okay. You like it? Yeah. Imagine if at the end of the show, he was like, oh yeah, by the way, if you want to get like the recipes for all the food you saw today, including that like Nona who made the secret sauce in her kitchen, you can get the Sicily cookbook. Just go on my website and get it. He would have sold $10 quadrillion worth of that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So but that's not Fintertainment is not just that idea. That's the first and probably the easiest.
I'm trying to give people like who haven't seen a visual, right? Like because it looks like that. Like here's the editor, the guru is like on film. He's on the road.
Yeah.
He's traveling. He's talking in different locations with different people.
So he's investigating an investing opportunity, but he's not doing like an hour-long sit-down with the CEO in the office. He goes to this town, and there's a backstory of the town and the rise and fall of the town, and he sits down with the bar owner, and it's unscripted. He sits down with the bar owner, and I'm like, hey, what are you hearing? Like, what's this? Give me the inside scoop. And they're literally doing shots of tequila at like 10 in the morning. And then, this particular thing it ends up being, we reveal that it's helium. Like he's investigating a helium drilling thing, and it's on Navajo land. So then we go out, and it's gorgeous, man. We go out to this 4,700 acre ranch with a drone shot and a Navajo leader with his horses who sort of like gives his blessing. He's like, again, all unscripted. We're like, hey man, tell us, like, what do you think about the helium stuff? And so it's a show, the idea, Fintertainment, where everyone needs to go is entertainment. Like, I would watch this show on Netflix anyway. Oh yeah, by the way, there's a way you can make money. Mm-hmm. Right? So another example would be, it doesn't have to be that, like just that style. If you're a day trader, how would you do that? Well, there's a way to do it. I promise you, in the next couple of years, there will be a show similar to an idea of like the Real Housewives of Day Traders. So that will be a show.
Well, like this is actually there's a lot of stuff that's happened here actually. So I'm going to throw back to Tim Sykes, probably the original trading influencer. He got notoriety originally because he was featured in this kind of like crazy magazine called Trader, which was like Wall Street traders and all this other stuff. But they were like having like crazy like Wolf of Wall Street parties was what brought down that group. But he was featured in there, and then he started going on like these different reality shows. Like there was one that was something like that, like way ahead of its time, that was trading or making money focused. I forget which, and he was the young, jerk on there who was crushing it. And then he started doing, got PR. He went on like CNN. He got banned from CNN. Is it CNN or?
He was on Below Deck.
He was on Below Deck. Yeah. But he got banned from one of the news shows because he brought models in bikinis to carry his charts, stuff like that. But he played it up, right? So he was trying to be like entertaining. And then you have, with the success of Shark Tank and other shows, now you have Darren Marble, who founded Issuance, which is a cap raise platform for Reg A's and stuff. He has Going Public, which is a show about, like, it's a reality show about a company going public, and they're trying to obviously get, you know. And then you have Unicorn Hunters with, like, Steve Wozniak and Lance Bass from NSYNC doing kind of like the Shark Tank for startups kind of thing as well. So, like, this is a thing that's happening, this like transformation of, like, or combination of media entertainment models with investing more and more.
I used to make all my new employees and even my old employees, I always made them watch a half-hour episode of Bob Ross. Bob Ross's his business model is no different than our business model. The show was free; you can just watch it on PBS, right? And and the entire time, as he's painting, he's telling you a story. He's invisible. He's selling invisibly to you, because at the very end of each show, he said, "Hey, drop us a line. We send out a newsletter. I might be in your town next week or next month or whatever." And then he would collect all those names. And then what did he do? He sold them paint supplies.
So I think of...
and he made a fortune.
He made a fortune. Based on... I was having a conversation with Adam Richardson about your Fintertainment, and we ended up talking about Rick Steves. Rick Steves Europe on PBS. Like, he built I think it was like a $70-80 million business on the back of that, where he was doing tours and backpacks and everything else, because you just followed along with him in the video, and, like, he built a relationship. You like how he travels. You like what he's, and he built a whole business off of media like that. So we know it works. You know it works.
Someone who's done a great job of this accidentally, I think, is Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports. So I think, like, to wrap your head around it, because I don't think, does everyone have to do Fintertainment? No. Could you just, like, do a newsletter for the next 20 years and make a killing? Yeah, some guys probably will. But Dave Portnoy's, like, hacked American culture. And, like, he started with a free gambling picks newsletter that he would hand out. And now if you go there, like, during the pandemic, when there's, like, no sports, so he couldn't bet on sports, he started day trading and was live streaming it and was, like, losing millions of dollars, right? And it was so entertaining. I loved it, right? And so, I'm one of the people you were talking about. Like, I started watching Dave Portnoy do pizza reviews.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Years ago. And then the next thing you know, like, oh, now I'm on the website. And the next thing you know, they had for a minute, they ended up stopping it because I signed up for Barstool Gold. I don't pay for shit, but I was paying like $5 a month for Barstool Gold. And then they would be like, oh, we're doing this special whatever. You can get these purple Barstool sweatpants for whatever. I have 2 pairs of purple Barstool sweatpants. And then you know all the stuff that he's doing. Then they have all these other brands under the Barstool thing, which again was a free picks, like, newsletter, betting picks. And now they have like 20 different brands, and each one has a podcast, and each podcast has merch, and they do events, and all of that because people were entertained, and then they got into the universe, and now they're there. Like, I might want to really be in your universe, right? Like, and so instead of thinking about, this is where, like, copywriters are going to have to become copy producers, and gurus, like, especially if you're, like, trying to find a new guru, I'm sorry, but the track record, brand beats track record every day of the week. Some of the worst track record people are the ones selling the most stuff right now, right? But I want to get into the universe. Like, I want to know the other stuff that you do. Like, I don't know, you like have a motorcycle and that, like, I want to know, I'm like, yeah, this is like a cool guy that I want to be associated with.
That's what we do in our Discord channel. If you go in our Discord channel, I bet you 50% of the stuff that we talk about is about the economy, investments. The other stuff, hey, I just got back from Florida with my wife, and played pickleball every day.
This is the cool stuff, and this is why when you're trying to find a guru, like gurus are going to have to be interesting.
Right.
They're going to have to be able to talk on camera. Yes. They're going to like if you follow Porter's Instagram. This is where I'm like, Porter, please, God, and this is with like all due respect. Like, Porter's brilliant, but he's posting awesome shit that he's doing on Instagram, like
constantly
fishing. What is it? Deep sea fishing with fucking sailfish and I'm like, bro, this is the thing. No, he's posting it on Instagram and like 8 people see it.
To the fishing hour.
Right,
on the
dude,
fishing
on the boat.
Right, like part of the. Not only would I want to come in on that, just like, cool, I want to follow along on this thing. Oh yeah, how this guy make all this fucking money?
Well, so Tim Sykes, he did this. He's done so many like hilarious things that I remember him telling me that they did. And this is literally so like I met Tim in the beginning when like we helped him launch his first newsletter service, and like I remember like having the argument with him that he should show his statements that showed he actually turned 12,000 into 4 million. Rather than just the profitly thing that he owned. And he was like this very like quiet, thoughtful, like it was an act. And then he morphed into that person. And so at the point that like later on, we were sitting down in, is it Austin with Zach? I think it was Austin. It was LA. And Tim comes in. He just got back from Vegas. He drops his backpack and literally stacks $40,000 fell out of his bag. Like he's already like he morphed into that guy. It was hilarious. But he did this thing where they joked, they called her the Instagram Madam. It was an agency where you could pay and they would get all the Instagram girls to advertise your handle. And so for his birthday, he had all the Instagram models like hold a sign up when they're turned around or whatever, like happy birthday to Tim. And he just sat on Instagram and all these dudes were like, oh my God, how do I be like you? And he's like, oh, thanks man, buy my shit. Thanks man, buy my shit, over and over again. So like, that idea that like people see stuff on Instagram, they're like, why are all these girls like? Well, he paid $15,000 for them to do it, and like, how do I get in that position? Here's how I did it. Buy my stuff.
You remember, rest in peace, Jim Dines. Every conference that back in the day, Dines, wherever the conference was, he would contract out the local model agency, and he used to call them Dinettes. Right, and he would hire these beautiful women to man his booth at these conferences, and his booth was always the most crowded one. All because he hired these models to hand out literature and sell his newsletter.
I have 2 things that I want to say. One about kind of what you've been talking about, which is, and I guess it relates to hot, sexy models as well, as all things do. But it really comes down to, like, let's talk about what we're talking about here. Because we're giving specific examples, but what are we really seeking for? We're looking for the magalog. That's ultimately what we're talking about here. There was a period of time where sales letters were the thing. And then somebody came up with the idea of, like, what if we disguise a sales letter as a magazine? And it just it took off in terms of response. And then came the book log, and then came the VS. Like, we are just looking for the next format to convert what we have that we know is fatiguing into something that feels bigger than it is.
That's why we're starting to test stuff on Discord.
Well, I would say that there's a couple things there. One that relates to both of those. One is like you're 100% right, 100% right. And those format things traditionally, from a promotional standpoint, were like it's disguised. That's why it works, right? You can't tell immediately that it's an ad, and that's why it breaks through that like kind of attention resistance. Yeah. But the magalog and bookalog were tied to a delivery format of direct mail.
Yeah.
E-letter comes along. You have a delivery format in email The VSL, as video comes on, becomes more like it got through. The webinar is the same thing. It's a format that people were used to getting content on, and so then you put promotion in that content form, and the two mix together. With Fintertainment and like that kind of docu-series kind of approach, now you're saying this is how you watch stuff, but your delivery content then has to, in that model, if that becomes your promotional model, your content delivery model has to also then follow that. Like they have to be merged together or else it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
And so it changes the entire nature of the business, just like the people like Cody Sanchez and other people who have social first kind of businesses, their whole content production system in staffing is built around social. Then they have their newsletter.
Yeah.
So it will change the nature of the business.
The big miss with the people who don't get it is because they associate it. You know, forever people say like, oh, we got to go younger. We got to get the younger people. And then everyone says, no, you can't do younger, right? Because they just don't buy. It's always going to be 45 to 75.
45 to 60, I think these are sweet spots.
45 to 60, white, Republican. Fine, right? That could all very well be true. That's fine. But then those people, the people that are 40 eventually become that age and then become your customer. But what those people are missing is that it's a format change. Like the person who's 15 years old right now, I'm just using a very young age for like hyperbolic explanation, is not going to be opening up an email and clicking it, I don't think, 40 years from now when they're now like the target demo. There will be some new delivery mechanism. So people are missing it because they associate like, oh, you want to do like this entertaining stuff? No, I don't want to go for the younger kids. It's not about going for the younger kids. Like 60-year-olds are watching Joe Rogan, or watching Yellowstone, listening to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, by the way, another perfect example of a universe. He does 3-hour-long podcasts, which people listen to. So that shows if like you can be entertaining, people will listen to your stuff. It doesn't have to be a 5-minute video. And then he'll interview a guy about aliens building the pyramids. And then he's selling Alpha Brain supplements or some shit, right? I mean, but once you're in the universe, man, and you're like, this is my guy.
Because he has a worldview.
You're in the universe. And okay, yeah, and the UFC is one of those things. And biohacking is one of those things. Like, if you were going all out as a guru, yeah, cool, you're super into motorcycles or whatever, and so am I, and this and that, and you go sport fishing, and oh yeah, trading is also one of the things you do, right?
I have a great memory of how this must look on the customer perspective. I remember I was at this internet marketing event when I was working with Makepeace and I was talking to this guy. Frank Kern had just spoke, and this guy had he's 20, making 70, 80K on his own business for the first time, and he was so excited to meet Frank Kern. And I remember him talking, and he's like, Frank is everything that he literally said this. He's like, Frank is everything that I want to be. Mm-hmm. And he's like, and he goes down the list. He surfs, he does this, he does that. He just went down this list. It's like, he's everything that I want to be. And I was like, oh my God, that's the avatar. He was so just overwhelmed with a chance that he could run up and talk to the guy who was literally his hero because he was successful in a non-traditional way, lived a lifestyle on his terms that happened to match who he was and what he aspired to. And so I always remember that. It's he's who I want to be. It's
like-minded people, John.
Yeah. It's almost like you know something.
So just to get back on the email thing, 91% of all email doesn't get open. So, and I started in this business in '94, and I can still remember Bill and Mark saying, the mailbox is getting crowded. It's getting crowded, and email is definitely overcrowded now. And so we're taking a different approach here now. We're starting to test other things. We call it omni-channel, where we hit them with everything that we can get. TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, texting, SMS, and of course email. But I've been saying for at least for the past couple years, instead of us chasing down the customer, I want the customer to chase us down. And that's why we're trying to build this Discord community to where it's people we don't have to ask them to join. They ask us to join. And so I think that's where, for me, I ask my employees, what's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning, right? I mean, besides, go to the bathroom or whatever, do you check your email? No, I check my phone. I check my text messages. I check, social media. And I think that's where we got to be.
Over time. Yeah, I think it's interesting to say that because at my interview or conversation with Matt McGarry, who was acquisition for The Hustle and Milk Road, he had a thing about the kind of morning brew world's concept of content in that it was like they're trying to build habitual content. Like I just want to check this real quick in the morning. Like it's a thing that's part of your day. Yeah. And I thought that was a really interesting frame, like that habitual content, which is exactly what you're saying.
I mean, newsletters aren't going away. Email is not going away. It's just a very, very crowded space right now.
The direct mail box is no longer crowded.
Yeah,
I think that's
everything old is new
one
again.
Of those things that especially on the back end, like mailing to the house file.
Yeah,
it's probably really productive.
I think more people need to go back to physical fulfillment, especially for high ticket products.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now to transition a little, not transition, but to kind of pull out a point here about the franchise and standing out. I think that you can build a guru in ways that are totally unique that you could never mistake him for someone else, right? And I think there's less energy put into that than there probably should be. And so I have a dream for Charles Mizrahi, who a lot of you guys did work with him. You know him. He's very New York. He's born and bred in New York. He traded on the floor. He was a Barron's top-ranked money manager. He's a value investor. He's a Buffett acolyte. He's an Orthodox Jew. Very New York. And so my dream for him was, and we never really got it launched in a way that I thought would have been good, maybe we're too far ahead, was the Park Avenue Investment Club. And the idea was to make him like Mr. Big in Sex and the City, Mr. New York with the black car limo, New York locations, walking around the city. Everything is he's plugged into the New York financial scene and social scene in his community, and really bring that forward. And it was way too early. The media wasn't there. We weren't but I always thought that idea of taking someone like that who has a strong connection to in his case a place, but it doesn't have to be a place that is associated with finance, and making him kind of the touchstone avatar of New York investor. That could be an amazing brand if you did it right. You could also do it terribly and it wouldn't work. But I think there's a way to do it that is probably easier now than it would have been 10 years ago. I think we thought about it because of the way that media works and the way we work it. And so I think those ideas like that are probably an area that is really ripe and rich for creativity in the space to stand out.
We used to call him Uncle Chuck. But that's a good example of where branding beats track record every day of the week. Yeah. Charles had great track record, but we just could not figure out how to sell him at all. And I don't know, has Agora figured out how to sell him? He's
doing well at Banyan, but he's not the biggest. Yeah. But yeah, it's harder because he's right. And so and for someone like that in particular, I feel like it's important to if you have that situation. Okay, well, it's not the ideas of the investments that's getting people excited. So then what else do you have to sell?
Just to stick on Charles for a second, if you're going to sell Fintertainment to anybody at Agora, the person you want to talk to is Aaron DeHoog.
That's problematic, unfortunately.
Oh.
Yeah.
Aaron just left Banyan.
Then never mind. You're SOL, my bud.
No. That's funny.
Dang, yeah, no, because of all the publishers at Agora, Aaron was the one who actually got video, that got and really understood what we're talking about here, and understood that the business needs to go in that sort of direction. And he would be the person that you would want to talk to sell Fintertainment, because everybody else who's currently at Agora right now, Agora had to circle the wagons a little bit, and you're not going to circle the wagons over the crazy asshole who wants to try a bunch of new things.
No offense.
I have it tattooed on me.
No, but here's the thing: Mark, Bill, they know that you're right. I think we're all sitting here. We know that you're right, and it's not the Fintertainment that's right. It's the need for that new format, the need to start paying attention to brand, the need to start really getting back to what this business is about, which is establishing a relationship with customers.
This is funny because I think yesterday, right, Porter sent out an internal letter, and he brings up the idea of brand and direct response and how it needs to be more than just direct response, and that the relationship is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I pitched a show idea to Porter like a year and a half ago, and he was like, no.
He has strong opinions.
But yeah. But yeah.
Just for the record, when internet was being born, Taipan, my old division that I worked for, we were the first ones to actually embrace the internet. We had our first website, started building an email list, and Bill Bonner was like, "This is going nowhere." But Bill is smart. He's smart enough to realize when maybe he doesn't know everything, and so he allowed us to do it. And then he started Daily Reckoning.
Yeah, I think his just as an aside, I think his willingness to let everyone experiment is probably the only way that they could have transitioned from direct mail to the internet, because there's a lot of different ways he could have gone.
Yeah,
and a lot of different ideas, and people being able to settle out and figure out, hey, this works. Like if it was just a command structure straight down, they might not have made that transition so well.
One of the things that this has popped into my head, so it's kind of a slightly disjointed, but not totally, is with the idea of like entertainment, especially, bringing people into your universe, the front end, in an entertaining fashion. The more you go towards entertainment, the further away from FTC scrutiny you are. And so, like, right now, man, like what I'm seeing are people starting to use language that they weren't using in 2020 because they were afraid.
They weren't taking a year and a half.
Right. So it's like, guys, fuck, man, is that cycle just going to keep repeating itself?
That's a phenomenal point, is that like these big kind of promotional ideas, because you're relying on that or you're relying on the relationship with it's less dependent on claims.
In this first promo we're doing, for example, this first Fintertainment promo, there's no testimonials in there. There's zero claims in there. There's no percentages in there. There's no talk about previous stock picks in there. Nothing. And you might hear that if you're in the industry and go, what? That's fucking impossible. No, it's like, it's a very entertaining show that builds trust and credibility with the guru. And then, like I said, and at the end, oh yeah, like if you want to find out everything about this thing, just go ahead and get this report. But, so I can sleep well at night knowing there's not going to be a knock on the door.
The thing that I like about that is it reminds me of like Plague of Black Debt or even E-Myth Revisited. Like if you read those books, like, and you get to the last page, it's an order form that you can send in. Like the book is a book. It's not like it will mention the newsletter every now and again, but in passing.
Right.
But it's like you'll read the book and be like, if you're really captivated by that idea, like there's never a point in the book where it's just like, go to the last page and send this in because then you'll make a bunch of money. No, it's just a natural part of the actual experience of the physical object. Just like what you're doing with that video is you're baking into it and weaving into a digital object, a person's experience, and acknowledging that there are going to be some people that will want to take action after that naturally. So
it's the art of the invisible sale. Yeah. That's how, Bob Ross, that's how he made his fortune. You had no idea when you were watching the Bob Ross video that you were actually that he was a salesman the entire time until the very end. And even then you were like, you still didn't get it.
And talk about like having a persona that people to this day love.
Yeah, he's bigger now than he was ever before. Yeah. And he's been dead for 30 years.
I think on a note that you mentioned, that the need for a guru to differentiate themselves, I think that that's going to be a unique challenge for a lot of our businesses going forward. One, kind of to your point, it reminds me of something that you said on Kyle Milligan's podcast, which is that every man has to have a code. And like when you said that, I was just like, fuck yeah. Every man does need to have a code. But
The
more
Wire.
importantly, huh?
It's from The Wire.
Okay, fair enough. But, apropos, we're in Baltimore.
Right.
But, like, not only that, but for a guru, they also have to be willing to broadcast their code. They need to wear their code on their sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
A guru who does this really well, I think, is Tom Dyson. Like, if you read Tom Dyson's editorial, there are certain themes, almost like, classical music leitmotifs, like, that just come through and weave through his editorial again and again and again and again. And, like, he will restate the same idea in many, many different ways across editorial. So there is that sense of relationship and being built with this person because you know what they stand for. You know where they fall on the sides of debate.
Which is the essence of, like, Warren Buffett in communication.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The problem with that, though, is that it's hard to find credible gurus who can do that. Because most of the people, like, what would be our ideal pool of gurus to pull from? Somebody who was on Wall Street, somebody who, like, has some accolades from Wall Street, somebody who doesn't want to be on Wall Street anymore. And so you're pulling from that. And what do we know about people in that pocket? They're shit writers. They probably have a terrible personality. They're all math geeks. Like, so, like, the idea of, like, using Fintertainment to sell these people is like, well, of course they're all going to be bad on camera. They suck.
I think, yeah, but I think that actually this has been shown. Like, you can invest in training them to be better.
Yes,
it does, but it does take investment.
Yeah,
but I do think that there is this thing of, like, the quality of what they bring to the table. And I don't mean just in terms of their analysis and track record, but the quality of what they bring to a franchise, kind of to the essence of, like, well, what is there a perspective? Mm-hmm. Like, do you really have a perspective? And then if you do, because a lot of them don't, mm-hmm. but if you do, is anybody going to care about it?
Yeah.
And so, like, that is harder. It's harder to find people who have, it's harder to find people who have a code and live by it, like you said, than it is to find people who can write something or analyze something.
Yeah.
And, like, I remember Clayton said this about, like, when he was talking about Martin, because in the 90s, like, Martin had his rating agency, and he got called to Congress, and of course they took pictures, they used those photos like crazy. He mm-hmm. testified in front of Congress, and it was like, on paper, Martin is a lion. You meet him in person, and he's much more sedate and this and that. Mm-hmm. And Clayton was always like, what I try and do is take who Martin is and just make him bigger. Mm-hmm. And that's what he does in the promo. And I think that has to be in the editorial, though. You have to be bigger. Like, bigger versions, like lionized or idolized versions of kind of who you are and what you believe in.
Well, we just came out of a period, John, where you knew where you saw their code. Mm-hmm. We were talking about this earlier, COVID. Okay? Yeah. Here at Angel, well, I bought this building in 2019, renovated it for a year, moved in January 1st, 2020, and then had to close it, right? But when everybody came back, well, and some people never came back, people were still wearing masks, people were still afraid to stand next to you. But there was a group, I would say a core group of people here where we bucked the trend. And that's the role of a legit guru, is to buck the trend. I was telling Rob this story. I have a house in Florida, and in May of 2020, everybody was stuck home. I was like, screw this. Let's hop into the car, get the dog, and we're going down to Florida. Florida was open. We get down to Florida. First off, people thought I was crazy for driving all the way down from Maryland to Florida. But as soon as we got there, the next day, Florida restaurants in Sarasota started to reopen. I told my wife, "Hun, book the restaurant. We're going. We got to show people that it's okay to go out." So we go out to the restaurant. I take a picture. It's still on my Facebook page. I take a picture of my girls and my wife, posted it on Facebook, the caption, "First restaurant in 3 months." The reaction was 50-50. 50% of the people was like, "Hey, great job." The other 50 were like, "How dare you? You're not taking this serious enough." But the entire time I was telling my wife, like, somebody has to be the first one. Somebody has to be the first one to get out there and show the rest of America that it's okay. It's okay to go back to normal. And that's the exact same thing that gurus have to do. They have to not just tell their readers, they have to lead by example as well.
Yeah, and I think it's more than just leading by example in terms of like an investing trend. Like that scenario you just described in like the perfect world would be something you put out to your universe.
Right.
Right? And they would be like, fuck yeah, that's my guy. Now I'm going to go buy a t-shirt like or whatever, you know?
I mean, right now people are buying Donald Trump golden diapers for the same logic. That's really happening right now.
What I always tell people. I'm like, look at like how many people follow Tesla versus follow Elon Musk, right? Like,
Yeah.
like that, like saying controversial things, being, like taking a stand, whether people agree with it or not. Like,
Yeah.
it's definitely, and I say that, well, not to cut you off, but like going back to Buffett, like Buffett took a stand inside finance in ways that like people forget that people ridiculed Buffett like crazy. And then like there's that great Sun Valley story that opens his biography Snowball, where he's in Sun Valley, the billionaires retreat thing, and all the 1990s tech gurus are there, and he gets up there and he tells he tells a story, and they're laughing at him, like they're thinking like he doesn't understand the new economy, he missed the boat, he doesn't know anything, and he tells a story about cars and how there were 3,000 car companies, and at the time, there's no way you could have told that Ford was going to be the winner. The only thing that you knew for sure was to short horses, right? But he has like this very clear perspective on what a good investment is and what he doesn't invest in, and he was getting shit on for it. And then he stuck to his guns, and so people, same thing. They're like, I love that guy, like he's my guy, and they're like Buffett acolytes,
Right.
Yeah.
But sorry, you were.
No, you what you just said, that anecdote was better than any bullshit I could have said. Buffett, I think, is a really good example of like, that takes a very political stance, a very sociological, I'm planting my flag in this idea. And like you said, it polarized people. Divide a room and everybody talks about you. And that's ultimately what we're talking about when we're talking about branding and finding a guru who you can build a brand around. Buffett is like on the softer side of that, the more investing and nerdy side of that, but you can certainly build a brand around those ideas as well in the exact same way. Buffett ties his morality to the investments and investment ideas that he picks. Not a lot of investment gurus in our business do that.
Yeah, no, he absolutely does. Like, he's phenomenal in that. He's so many parts of him, and I think in general, like you can look at finance and see like there are great case studies of gurus in mainstream finance, and they mirror or parallel gurus in our space. People like Buffett, people like Thiel, people like Schwartzman, and you have like the rises and falls of people who are just chasing trends, and you have all the same like stuff, but like guruship matters in finance as much as it does in newsletters.
Well, I mean, Bill Bonner is a great example. When I was starting at Agora, Bill Bonner hated stocks. Still hates stocks. He likes gold. That's it.
Right.
And land, I guess.
Yeah.
But even during the .com mania of between '97 and 2000, he just kept saying it over and over again. Remember his famous quote about Amazon, "The river of no return." He still uses that today, even though Amazon's up 100,000%. So, but
It's a good line though.
Bill has missed every bull market, in my lifetime, and he seems to be okay with that. He's built an entire brand around that.
He became a billionaire off of that.
Yeah, curmudgeon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just it's not just his investing ethos, although that's part of it. He's one of the few people where like whatever he puts out, I read when like Bill Bonner Diary when that was out, man. Loved reading that. And like he's talking about like fixing the roof on the place he just bought in Ireland, or getting in the fights with the native population in the mountains of where does he have the ranch? What,
Argentina.
Yeah, Argentina. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's like up there to like plant the vines for the vineyard, and I'm like, this is awesome. I read all of it. It's
his
so
writing
interesting,
style is so unique.
and none of it's about investing. Like he has those other things, but I'm just, man, this is the super rich guy living his life in this particular way. I love it. It's so
And then throw in
entertaining.
and, like,
Right.
that, like, kind of, for sure. I do think that like, I try and think about this a lot, and I don't know why, because I'm not writing for anybody at this point. I don't write anymore, but I think about like what would be like kind of how would you elevate or create a kind of a guru brand, like that would be sellable, right? Like what kind of things could you do that are so out of the box? And I think this is an area where we don't think of what's possible. And I always use this example because it's so obviously true. We're right here in Baltimore. You got all these newsletters in Baltimore. You guys are in Baltimore. Agora's in Baltimore. MarketWise is in Baltimore. You are also journalists. We're all journalists, right? It would take basically an application process to start to be able to show up at the White House press room. And you're not going to get in every time. But all you got to do is get in there a few times when they're doing economic stuff, right? And I wouldn't say I'm a journalist and that I wouldn't position myself as a journalist to your readers per se, but it puts you in the room when big things are happening. And one of the things besides being like counter trend that people pay for is I want to be counter trend because the guy's on the inside, right? He has access to things and he knows things that I don't know. And you can get into all these places. I did this experiment and I ended up like talking to a bunch of senators and like, it took no time at all. Like, it's not that hard to get into any place. Going to, we had some of the events that I had here in Baltimore. I always bring Indranil up. He was the head of macro investment for Mubadala, which is now a $300 billion fund. It was $60 billion at the time. It was the UAE Sovereign Wealth Fund. He was coming to do deals with newsletters. Nobody really wanted to talk to him. I think about Porter had this great promo. It was a back-end promo. Did it like 19 million, and the headline was basically a long headline about how he had this dinner with all these powerful people. And I was like, man, I could put people more powerful than that in this room, and we did. We had billionaires, more than one, people who own multi-billion-dollar hedge funds, all this stuff, and it was like, well, it wouldn't take that much work to have any of your editors or gurus start to plug into places like that, not because there's more insight necessarily, but although there will be insight, but because the stories you could tell from it and the things that you could spin off of that to your readers, the insights, the relationships, the way you could build somebody up. And so to me, I always thought that would be like, pick an area, like how would be the dream thing for a guru? And like, you could actually just dev into that and get him those relationships and help them find that. That would be, to me, like, it's kind of like another direction to go with this, where it's like he becomes more promotable, right?
Well, I mean, we're talking about the dust that falls off of moth's wings. Like, everybody wants to, like, everybody wants to be dusted with greatness.
Yes.
Like, everybody wants to touch the bishop's robes. What is the logic of a back end? It either has to be bigger, faster, or it has to be closer to the guru. And what we're talking about is getting regular people wanting to have a little bit of greatness in their life. And so, I use the analogy of like dust falling off of a moth's wings because like people want to have the experience of being close enough to something that they can actually be caressed by it. And so what you're talking about is, again, Michael Jordan on a Wheaties box. It's getting that guru into the room so that the associations we have with that person now are greater than what they simply are.
Right. So. And it's and with that video model, it becomes instantly credible and interesting, right? So like imagine like you're kind of doing the Gary Vee thing of documenting, but you're documenting like, hey, I'm about to walk into the White House here, and then the video watches you walk through security. You don't even have to say what you're doing there.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like that kind of stuff like you could do in such an interesting way. I remember Mike Ward telling me, and this is the height of Money Map, he was like, do you want to be a guru? And I'm like, I'm not. He's like, but I've been doing so much work on the business development and networking side that like he say, hey, we're trying to get a hold of, what's his name? Bruce. He was founder of Canopy Cannabis. the Decacorn. He was the guy in cannabis, and I can't believe I'm forgetting his name right now. And I was like, well, we like met him last week and filmed with him some stuff, so I can give you his admin's email address. We have all these other people, guys investing with Bill Gates' family office and things like that. And he's like, because from his standpoint, he's like, we can sell that stuff like crazy, just the relationship network. A lot of his guys, like they hadn't been in finance for a long time. 20 years ago, their relationships have degraded. They don't have the connections anymore. And so like the connections is something that we can sell. And I was like, well, man, you can just that just takes like a little bit of elbow grease. Like you can do that, especially when you already have a publishing asset, because people want to be featured in the news. They want it to be featured places. It's not hard to go out and do that. And I think that that's something that it's not part of regular publishing, but I think you can very much go out and create an amazing set of relationships that would then feel unique. Like, how are you going to stand out? Like, this is the guy that I see all the time on Capitol Hill in the White House, and he's doing things that are related to that. And so if he's investing in defense, is he, you could make those things happen in such a way, make it so visceral with video now that it's like, well, you're just associated with that. Like, that's my guy for that.
Why do you think no one does that now?
There's 2-3 things, I think. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think one is it takes extra effort. It's not part of the day-to-day running of the business, right? It's a little extra. 2, it takes a guru who's willing to go above and beyond, right? So if he's a staff, like, he doesn't always want to do that, if he's not really interested. 3, I think people don't really, like, they don't know. They don't know that you, like, so I had this experience, this kind of like mentor of mine in China. It was more of I was Buddhist and all this other stuff. But I always use this story, he built a railroad with the government that he put no money in. He organized it, created billions of dollars worth of real estate, did it because he thought it was good for the people, right, to bring the development in. But he orchestrated this whole thing. He ended up getting accused of running a shadow government, all this other stuff. Had to leave for a while, but he stopped. Like, China was going to invade Taiwan in the 90s, and he brokered peace talks and stopped it. And he was a monk, had no money, right? And so I'm close friends with the family that was his main supporter. And his probably top Western student is like my best friend. We got to meet him. He was my teacher. And it opened my eyes to how you can maneuver. So there's this game, this kind of thing that we would talk about with his student. It's kind of like any room in the world, right? So pick a room in the world: the White House, Saudi Arabian palace. There is a social path of connection from where you're at to there. There are different lengths, different levels of difficulty, but you can get anywhere. You can get into any ecosystem. It's just it's a mental practice. And that's not a normal thing, right? But once you apply it, like I started applying it in 2018 playfully, just thinking like this would be kind of fun. And sure enough, like ended up in places that I never thought I'd end up. Yeah. And then 2020 kind of put a hold on everything. And then I had to reassess, like, hey, what direction do I want to take this now? And then had a thing with my partner, had to get that settled. And now I'm sitting here like reassessing. There's a lot of meat here on that exercise, but from a publishing standpoint, I think that like you can do almost anything.
I just want to say really quick, one, that's an amazing fucking story. I love that, and I want to emulate that for the stuff that I put out into the world. But secondly, I would say that there is one other reason, in addition to the ones you listed, why a lot of gurus and a lot of publishing businesses don't do this. What have we been talking about while we've been at this table? We've been talking about indirect associations, sort of like the subconscious stories that we build around things. A lot of times you'll talk to a guru and say, hey, why don't we do this? This would be really cool. And if the guru is from Wall Street and they've been sitting in a cubicle doing DCF analyses for 20 years, they're not going to inherently or intrinsically understand why that would be good, what the benefit of that would be, especially for either a marketing or for a storytelling standpoint. But I mean, just on that note, like it goes back to what you were saying before about how, gurus can be trained. But one thing that I've really discovered in working with people, especially on the editorial and fulfillment side, is that it's easier to teach an English major or a marketing major how to write about financial than it is to take a financial person and teach them how to write. Because there are just so many barriers and blocks to understanding things from a more lateral thinking perspective. Like, kudos to you for finding a guru who is willing to actually buy into your idea. Because I can imagine, a lot of more traditional, especially gurus from Wall Street, would balk at that idea. One, because they have this sort of false perception in their head about the reputation that they want to protect. And they would think that anything related to entertainment would undercut that, which is silly, but that's kind of where we are. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. And maybe it's just, a matter of time, right? Like, there's the final snowflake that causes the avalanche.
I think actually that's a really interesting point, because there is a lot of resistance to what kind of comes off as, and have heard them use the term carnival barking. It's a lot of difference than like feeling like you're Billy Mays pitch manning versus Anthony Bourdainin, right? I think visually, like, because it is a social acceptance thing for some of these guys. I had a guy who was like, he had $100 million hedge fund at this point. He used to work at Morgan Stanley, had crazy connections and things like that. And he was like, don't ever tell anyone I have a $100 million hedge fund. And I'm like, why? It's fucking embarrassing. It's embarrassing. A $100 million hedge fund is nothing. It's nothing. Like on Wall Street, like you talk to guys and they're like, we have people in our space. Well, I had a $30 million hedge fund, and it's like that only gets you credit with people who don't know anything. That loses you cred with people who do know anything, because having $100 million, $200 million is like, oh, this is your starter fund, huh? Like,
yeah.
So I guess it's just a matter of time until like a full transition takes place. That's just my guess. Like, I'm sure people resisted email at first.
Well, so that's the idea of a full transition is interesting, right? Because what it implies is that everyone's going to switch over to one thing, and I think that's part of the problem, is this belief that we're going to all switch over to one thing rather than creating a unique space. And that includes your media choices, and it includes your format choices, and it includes, because I think that's what
when I say full
transition.
I agree. When I say full transition, I mean where it becomes a standard and common practice. Some people do it and some don't. But like pitching the idea doesn't get you what the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
It's just like, oh yeah, we know it works for those people. We don't. That's what I mean when I say
I got you.
Full train.
You'd be surprised how many people don't. I mean, they're given the opportunity to be a guru, but they never seize one. And we've had a lot of editors here who have just let it slip through their hands, and so it takes a different kind of personality. Some people are just content with the status quo. I myself, I mean, my guru status is fluid. Sometimes I'm a guru and sometimes I'm not. Yeah, I'm guru fluid. Honestly, I just got back into the game just a year or two ago. So it takes a different kind of personality to really, really sort of seize it and milk it for all it's worth.
I mentioned earlier, copywriters are going to have to become copy producers.
Right.
And that's part of it, like recruiting a guru, like casting calls. Like,
right.
It's going to go more that way than the traditional way where you get assigned to some boring guy and got to figure out a way to do something interesting. You go find the interesting person and turn it into the thing. Mm-hmm. I think that's where we're going.
Yeah.
I have a suspicion that we would have an easier time finding that person who has already built a small following on like YouTube, for example, and then just bringing them into the ecosystem.
Sure.
Like do it the M&A way.
There's some phenomenal like little letters out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to Sven from Undervalued Shares, if you've seen them. So I'm gonna tell you he has a conference that he added, and once I tell you the name of the conference, you'll understand he's cut a little bit different. The name of the conference is Weird Shit Investing, and he's like, there's nothing in here that you will ever find talked about. He's like banned investments, like everything, right? Mm-hmm. It's like weird stuff, and he's always traveling and doing stuff, and so like people like that coming into the space, forming relationships with bigger pubs and doing things, I think. Yeah, you're going to find
that's awesome.
But it's also somebody.
I want to sign up.
Yeah, I already want to
sign up.
Right. Yeah. But it's somebody on the ground who's building something.
Yeah.
For the first time, I think that has that excitement. It's harder to get somebody who's employed to get on the plane, go out and do some crazy stuff. Then like Brian coming back, like Brian, he's going to do what he's going to do. If he likes the idea, he'll do it. There's no limits on him in that sense. If he doesn't like the idea, he's just not going to do it. Mm-hmm. But if he likes it, like there's nothing stopping him from doing whatever the hell he wants because he runs the show and like he loves the business and that like it's a
All I want to do, John.
Except for maybe your wife telling you you're not going to do it.
I love my wife too. All I want to do is play pickleball every day. That's it. That's all. That's where I am in life right now.
Yeah, you have to, and you have to have like if you have a publishing company and whatever, these businesses are all set up differently, but you have to have a publishing company that's okay with brands doing what they're going to do. And to go back to the Barstool Sports analogy, there's the CEO who runs it and he has his own thing, and then he's got 20 brands. He doesn't tell them what they're doing their own. They're kind of operating independently and doing their own thing under the umbrella. He's not saying, no, don't do this, no, and micromanaging and that kind of stuff. And so the publishers, someone's going to have to be okay with that.
Yeah, and there's also like a timing thing here too that I think is just in general right now is we're still crawling out of the worst period in industry history in 15 years. And so people have to kind of recapitalize. Mm-hmm. Things are working again. Let's kind of focus on fundamentals, get things working again. And so I think you're probably going to find more appetite for creative attempts, which is why I want to have the conversation now, I think, is over the next few months, 6 months, year, like as things kind of continue to come back, then there's more cash to try things. There's more appetite for that kind of thing than like kind of the, hey, I survived. Woo!
Yeah,
let's get healthy again.
And, I think we're all in agreement on the panel that there is a need for new channels. There is a need for new formats. And there's always going to be a strong resistance to every new thing, like at every single level of management and implementation, because new is attractive, but it's also scary. It's an alluring thing. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting period of years here because, at the same time all these changes are happening, a very large portion of the steady, steadfast, like stable demographic that we've always been speaking to, they're going to start dying off a little bit.
They already are.
Right. And so I'm not saying that we need to start speaking to like 23-year-olds who like want to learn day trading on TikTok. I'm just saying that there's somebody who just turned 30 and suddenly became aware, suddenly had a concept of the cosmos appear in their head and said, I should get my finances in order. I should probably learn more about finances in the stock market. And there's always going to be an influx of new people that want this information, but where they want to get that information is going to constantly shift. And so, really, ultimately, right now, it sort of feels like as we're making this transition, we're stabbing in the dark a little bit.
That was part.
Well, to that point, I try to get my information, on a first-hand basis. I have nephews, and they're in their 20s right now. And, I wasn't surprised when they said, oh, Uncle Brian, I'm a big investor in Bitcoin. Well, that kind of makes sense. But I was surprised when they said, Uncle Brian, do you own any gold? And I was like, yeah, a lot of it. And I was like, this gives me hope. Yeah. They're in their 20s and they're talking about, central bank crypto dollars and, and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, okay, there is hope. There is hope. Again, these 20-somethings are actually talking about stuff that I've been talking about for the last 30 years. So there is going to be, and I don't want to. I also do airsoft. You know what airsofting is? Yeah. So I do airsofting with my son, and whenever we're playing, there's always a group of older teenagers and guys that are in their 20s, and all that. Whenever we're eating lunch or something, I can hear them just talking about, I'm going to buy some more gold today or tomorrow, whatever. And I was like, okay, so those are our that's our future subscribers.
So and my FMS every year I do a state of FinPub thing, and I did this whole thing on demographics this year, and that was the thing, was that the younger generations are investing on a percentage basis at extraordinarily high numbers relative to previous generations. Yeah. And they are consuming content in different places, different platforms, and that's part of the shift that's coming. Right now you have and Andrew Taylor did some actual study on this at Investor Place, and he said that we think of them as the late stage boomers as our primary customers, but according to his data, it's Gen Xers mostly, and early, Gen X. So you're into mid 60s, but that's still so if you think about it from a life cycle standpoint, we always had this conception, and I think it's true, is that people come into the market in their 40s, 45, when they really start to think about investing for retirement. And then they're real hardcore until retirement, and then for the first few years after retirement, figuring out how they're going to generate income. And then it kind of gets they're at where they're at. And some people stay, but most of the market kind of fades out. And so what we're seeing is that millennials hit 40 2 years ago. The first ones, leading edge. They invested at levels that nobody else ever had. Gen Z is investing at 17, 18. They started at levels. And so it's a transformation of the audience.
My son is 15. He has a stock account. I mean, it's a custodial, but I mean, he asked me and my wife, he's like, I want to open up an account. And I was shocked when his first investment was a dividend-paying stock.
Nice. Good for him. No, I think just on that note, and this sort of ties into what we've been talking about vis-a-vis branding. But one of the things that I've noticed in my, my career has certainly been shorter than your guys's. But over the course of that career, and also knowing people that have been in the career for a long time, there's always an allure, a sort of shiny object, glow around more illiquid markets, more illiquid opportunities, things that are just beyond the scope of the mainstream. I think crypto is attractive right now because it's still kind of a little bit of a pain in the ass to buy crypto. Becoming less so. Anybody can sign up for a Robinhood account in 5 minutes and get one, but somebody who's 62 and just heard about Bitcoin for the third time and it's I am going to buy a Bitcoin, that person doesn't know the chain of okay, I can get Robinhood on my phone, I can get a Bitcoin. And so one of the things that I think is happening, especially with stocks, and it's happening to across our business, is we're starting to see fatiguing numbers, not just because of the nature of promotions that we're putting out, but also because stocks are a little bit old hat. Younger people don't really want to invest in stocks.
Well, there's a few things there. One is there's fewer than ever before.
Yeah.
Right? There's fewer stocks, period. Part of the Jobs Act and the whole Reg A funding space was kind of to create a model that almost looked like the early IPOs of the 90s and stuff, so that they could get there and hopefully go public to create a new kind of wave of pubcos. Whether that's going to work or not, we'll see. But there's way fewer of them than ever. At the same time, retail participation, 2020, market participation it's a straight line up, right?
Yeah.
And it stayed. So market participation is super high on the retail side. It's at record-breaking levels, and it stayed at record-breaking levels while we were in the shitter in FinPub.
Yeah.
And so there's this interesting dichotomy of, hey, there's people investing in public markets at a level that they never have before. They ain't buying our stuff. And that's possibly because of this generational issue.
Well, it's also because there's never been, age aside, there's never been a time where you could get freer or access to free information. Like you can go on YouTube right now and find better produced, more entertaining and interesting financial information, like by some dude, like better done, better researched than the fulfillment, not just than the promos of the biggest companies in FinPub, and also their fulfillment. You ever get one of these like master classes on options training, and you know that you like we've all written for, and then like you can go on YouTube right now
You get that.
and get hours and hours and hours of it for free, and it's better than what we sell. It just is. Like, anyone got a problem with me saying that, tell me, and I'll send you YouTube links of people crushing what you're putting out.
That trend of information, quality and move to free is definitely like a persistent trend. You also have with the Substack guys, like, you say a lot of the finance guys can't write, but some of them can, especially some of the analysts. And some of the Substack letters from real niche experts who are like, this is like the top 3 analysts in this sector is writing a thing on Substack. He doesn't have a huge following, but he has, I think, a lot of the top customers in the space are out there seeking information, people who are real investors consuming things. And they're showing up on places. And, like, I know a few of these guys, and they're getting questions from retail people who are subscribers, right? And so, like, those spaces, like, we don't exist in a vacuum for sure. And the free information, trading in particular, is harder because it's skill-based. And so if you're doing education, that's, like, people are on there teaching it. Investing, it moves.
Yeah.
And so the information is there, but, like, you can still sell, like, I love this guy. I want to see what he thinks. And so it's back to selling the person.
So on those YouTube channels, because, I mean, there's anything, man, name it. I can go like...
I hate financial YouTube channels.
How much do you need?
I know, like, this dude, he's got one.
Right. Like, how much do you need in dividend stocks to retire? Like, if you have this much, like, really done really well. Like, right, great marketing, great thumbnails, great headlines, and then great information.
Yeah. This is probably another big conversation. I think that there's a movement too that probably needs to happen towards being more of it's a combo niche media company where, like, it's not just the newsletter. There's an event focus. There's community, like you're doing Discord. I think building like something that is more robust than simply the information is kind of where we have to go as well.
Sure, but like where I was going with those channels, YouTube, it's saturated with them. But I'm still going to choose the one that, like, I feel like is like my guy. Right. So it's and you can see that by the subscriber count.
That's also why I actually personally I love long form, because and I consume a lot of short form like everyone, but I found that, like, anything that's long form that I listen to, like, I'm a buyer of that. Short form stuff I consume, like, oh, it's interesting, but that doesn't convert me to anything. But long form, if I'm like, wow, because you get to know the person, you get to know what they're looking at things, you get to understand them, and then, like, you build that relationship, and bam, you're,
Well, you've also subconsciously committed yourself to that just by spending that time. You're like, well, that time I spent must have been worth it.
Right, and that's also where I think that, kind of tying this back to some of the other conversation, I think that the use of a podcast shouldn't be as a substitute for an e-letter. They're fundamentally different things. And what you can do with the podcast is build those relationships. It's the guests you can get on, right, that add, like, the expertise you can build that is not your investment picks, but it's like, hey, wow, he's connected with everybody. He has all these relationships. He's plugged in over here. His credibility and the things that, like, he's talking about that are not directly like, I recommend this stock, but are, hey, he's I don't know, pick gold. He's got Randy Smallwood, who's the head of the World Gold Council, on there, and they're talking deep, and then they're going to go do something afterwards. Like, he's connected and, like, he understands that space. Oh, and it's over here too. And then that's stuff that you can then bring into your copy, into your editorial for the recommendations. But the two things aren't necessarily, they can be, but I don't think they have to be the same thing.
Yeah. Most of the time, you think about it, we're asking people to buy like on a back end, $1,500 product, whatever, $2,000, $2,500. And like the entirety of like my concept of knowing this person is like maybe a paragraph of copy that could be boilerplate copy for every other guru. I was on Wall Street. And then I decided like I wanted to work for the regular guy. Right, and it's like, or here's the big shift. Wait, I was on the CBOE, and then that's the big difference, But here, give me $1,500. Like
that's where Angel Suarez did this presentation in the first London FMS that I did, and he's talking about this issue of like when I'm selling Paul Mampilli, he says, right? He's like, this is who I'm selling, and he takes pictures of Xerxes from the 300, the Spartans, like golden god, and puts Mampilli's face on it, and he's like, this is what I'm doing to him in the copy. It's not the paragraph. It's like you're gonna think Paul is the greatest thing in the world, period, by the time we're done with this.
Yeah.
And it's like versus, like you said, like
right.
There's literally people I know who like they're cutting and pasting bio sections from one promo to the next one.
But I mean, just think about it. It's like you do it yourself. Like, why do we expect the readers to behave differently? You just said you do it. You personally consume hours worth of content and like get to know a person, right? And then maybe maybe do it. Why do we treat the potential customer differently? Say, here, asshole, trust me, boilerplate, buy this thing. Geez, why are conversion rates half of what they were? Like, I don't like, why is no one getting this message? And one of the things it might be, I think, is that with this potential shift or whoever shifts or doesn't, there might be a longer sales cycle, right? With like direct response, click, bang, boom. Okay, we know what the conversion rate is. Well, I don't know. Maybe if I watched, I'm just throwing this out. This is off the top of my head. If you had a pub and we just put out so much free information and videos, and not just about trading, about everything, right? Your personal life, etc. And like, could we track and see, okay, we didn't sell anything at the end of this, but we noticed that like the conversion rates on our other videos or other promos went up half.
This is already proven to a point. So I think it was at the Legacy like kind of mastermind I went to. They were talking about the trajectory of leads versus paid customers, right? So they're inverted. So if a customer buys here, his buying goes down, right? He'll buy a few things, right, and it goes down. Leads, they start with nothing and then it goes up. As in what we found in different groups have had versions of this is that if you do have good lead gen and you do have good like relationship building in newsletters, that lead, it does take longer, but he tends to be more valuable because by the time he buys, he's so committed to you that you're a better customer, right? And then a related story was from Money Map, where Mike Ward was like, when they would bring a new guru on, he would not launch a front end. What he would do is say, you're going to write an e-letter for 6 months. We're not going to launch anything until we start hearing from subscribers, hey, do you have anything to buy? And then if that doesn't happen, contract's over. If it does happen, they know they can launch the first product at a back-end price point and move front-end unit numbers. The only time you can do that, but it's because of that free relationship that's been built. And so with e-letter content, we know that's true. I think the problem is that the e-letter is super, super crowded in the inbox. So I think with but to your point, I think it's already proven that at least conceptually, that's true, right? People who come in and consume the content, the long-form content, build that relationship, become better buyers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to touch on some points that you've also been talking around too, because this is also a source of frustration for me with our industry a little bit too, which is that some of the best copywriters and marketers in the world work for Agora, but the moment they sit down to make a YouTube video, or the moment they sit down to do something that's like just in slightly a different format, it's like every principle of copywriting and good marketing goes out of their head. And like to the point where like I'll see like a Paul Mampilli YouTube video and be like, who are you making this for?
Oh, I do this terribly. Like, I just start my things. I don't think about like the copy structure and video structure the way I should. I know I should, but I don't do it. I do think I was having this conversation with somebody else a couple weeks ago, and I was like, you know what I need to do? Not just YouTube, but like I need to go like watch movies and docuseries and shows the way that I watched or read newsletter or promos when I started to become a copywriter.
Yeah.
Deconstruct the beats of the visuals and how it's set up, because that's one, it's just the idea of doing that is interesting to me. But that's how you learn deconstructing to integrate it into like how I think, because I haven't done it yet, and it's a gap.
Well, I mean, if you want to go meta about this particular podcast, we can go meta about this podcast, because I've been living on YouTube for like the last 5 years. Like, for example, and I got this concept from Ed Lawrence, but it's something that we're all familiar with, which is, say you have a target, with 1 at the center and 10 at the outside. And 1 is a disciple, a person who's just like, if you send them an email that says, buy MFer, and then it takes them to an order form directly, they'll buy. That's a 1. And so you can make content for a 1. Mm-hmm. And then if you go all the way out to the 10, now we're talking about like entertainment. Now we're talking about like going very far afield, trying to get as, people who might not be interested in the topic whatsoever, but they're kind of intrigued. They're kind of interested in what you have to say. They want to be entertained. And normally, like, FinPubs typically target like your 3 to 6 range. There's not a whole lot of attention being paid to entertainment, which is why I think that there's space for what you're trying to do in our world. But when it comes to like a podcast like this, you have to sort of decide like, okay, based on the packaging, based on the thumbnail, based on the title, like it's exactly like a sales letter. You have to think about, when we're talking about branding and things like that, we have to think about who this stuff is, for whom this stuff belongs or is going to. And one of the things that I think is a major obstacle that a lot of more old school DR copywriters are going to have to contend with as we shift into more branding stuff is paying attention to stuff like that, because not a whole lot of that is done. And that's often as simple as like putting a sizzle reel at the front of your video, like hiring a really good graphic designer for
like, like I think about this for this podcast too, and I've one, it's just me doing it, so I'm not doing a whole lot. But 2, I have a commitment inside FMS. I have another business that I do that's not directly related to this, but the FMS stuff, like I made a commitment for the event that it's going to be the 1s and 2s in that scenario.
Yeah.
Period. Because I don't because I don't want to, like, one of the benefits of an event like FMS and the community like FMS is that it's the exact opposite of traffic and conversion, right? You go to traffic and conversion, there's 6,000 people here. It's going to take you 3 days to find one person that you can actually do business with. When you go to FMS, it's like 95% of the people in the room will do business with you and will want to do business with you. And so I'm very careful about, like, I don't want to expand this audience dramatically. It's a very tight audience intentionally. That's also a good excuse to be lazy. On that stuff, but you're 100% right. Like, 'cause I think about that too. Like, there's times when I'm like, oh, I should do a sizzle reel with this. I'm not trying to get more views on YouTube. It's more of I use it there to host stuff. But there is other stuff that I do that I'm like, if I don't do that, I know it won't work.
Yeah,
at all, because it has to be.
Right. But I mean, we can go back to what we know about e-letters too. If you don't start an e-letter with like a captivating story or a stinger or something interesting, something that to attract, even if you have like a 1, they're probably going to, either not pay attention or the attention will fatigue over time.
Yeah.
And so, like, we can say that, use another analogy here. Like, what would you rather read, a scholarly article or a Malcolm Gladwell book? Like that summarizes that scholarly article. Like, we want and we crave, even for stuff that we're interested in.
Yeah.
We crave it to be packaged in a way that is palatable to us. Yeah. And I think that, as we shift into Fintertainment or to different channels, a lot of copywriters and marketers are going to have to really start paying attention to that kind of stuff in a way that they never have.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're 100% right on that. Well, any final thoughts?
Why are you looking at me?
Waiting for you. Wisdom on high.
No. No, I don't. Final thoughts. I think This was good. Yeah, final thought. Let me think. Okay. Yeah, hey, everyone that I pitched a Fintertainment show idea to and you said no, by the time this podcast comes out, the price doubled, asshole. So, because the first one will have been out by then, so there you go. Feel free to cut that out.
No, I'm not cutting that out. That might go into the sizzle reel.
I like that. I just on the note of Fintertainment, like I was thinking about this stuff too, and I have a couple of YouTube videos coming out. One of them, it's actually based on an old Mark Ford, piece of content that he put out like around his early to rise days about like the cost of views. And so what I did was I took that piece of editorial and I thought like, what could I do in my life to make this interesting and captivating? And so right now I'm working on a YouTube video called Lamborghini versus Minivan. And so I hired about 12 supermodels and I rented a Lamborghini and I went to Mark's house and I filmed this. It's coming out on my channel relatively soon. But it's just like trying to pay attention to stuff like that. And I think that, the stuff that I'm doing is stuff that you in parallel have been thinking about and working on too. So I think that the zeitgeist is there. Like the need for some like greater spectacle, greater branding, that's all there. You're on Discord. Again, we're all sort of rowing in the same direction, but parallel to each other. It really just comes down to a matter of like, somebody's going to crack it in a way that none of us has cracked it yet. Yeah. And we're still trying to figure out like who's going to be that person, what is going to be the new format, what is going to be the new like modification to the model. And I don't think that, again, like I said earlier, we're still stabbing in the dark a little bit.
Yeah, no, but we're seeing like a lot of good signs that like, I know there's social to phone floor, stuff that's, you're 60 to $100 million brands out there at that, with that model. Yeah. You're seeing lots of different things working on the small space that aren't scalable at all. But are coming in, and so it is like the transformation of the environment is like slow, and then all at once.
Mm-hmm. Hockey stick.
Yep. Yeah. So,
I mean, yeah, we can talk about the transformation of the formatting, but at the end of the day, guys, it's all about ideas. Mm-hmm. Our industry is built on ideas that they can't get anywhere else, and we just have to keep reinventing these ideas. Like I said earlier, Angel Publishing was built on a single idea called peak oil. We've gone from peak oil now to a cryptocurrency that's backed by gold that's still in the ground.
That's cool. That's very cool.
And that's how we tell the stories. We're storytellers, and our readers want to live through us. And look at Bill. Sometimes I feel like Bill is living this romantic life. He's fighting with the rebels in Argentina. His couple of his buildings get burnt down by them. But he's living the life. He's Ernest Hemingway meet Warren Buffett, right?
That's a great tagline for him.
And I was reading something from him from a few years ago, and now he's being referred to as Don Bill. And I have a friend who lives in Colombia, the country Colombia, and I was like, Tony, what does, instead of senior, what does Don denote? He's like, that means you're the master. So, Don Bill.
Nice. Awesome. All right, well, anyone wants to reach you, Brian, you are on, obviously, Angel Pub and in the Discord, FMS Pro, LinkedIn. You guys have a podcast as well. Sean, you have your name of your podcast, YouTube channel?
If you want to hear me talk about writing stuff, search Copy That Show on YouTube. If you want to see me talk about financial stuff, search DIY Wealth on YouTube.
There you go. I'll link those up. Mr. Braddock.
BigIdeaPromos.com.
Yep. And FMS Pro Discord. You're in there.
I am.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. Well, thanks for letting us use the studio. This is amazing.
Yeah.
It's cool. Killer. All right.